My name is Naomi. I'm 30 years old, and if you saw me at the grocery store or the coffee shop downtown, you'd probably think I have the perfect life. Nice house in the suburbs, a husband who opens doors for me, neighbors who wave when I check the mail. But here's what you wouldn't see behind my smile. I'm drowning. Not literally, of course. But drowning in a marriage that's become as predictable as the morning news. Drowning in conversations that never go deeper than, "How was your day?" and "Did you pay the electric bill?" My husband Michael is, well, he's a good man. I need to start there, because what happened isn't really his fault. He's the kind of person who remembers your birthday, who never raises his voice, who still says please and thank you like his mother taught him. We met 4 years ago at a work conference. I was 26, working in marketing for a small firm. He was 28, an accountant with kind eyes and terrible jokes that somehow made me laugh anyway. Our first date was dinner at an Italian place where the waiter spilled wine on my dress, and instead of being embarrassed, Michael made jokes until I was laughing so hard I forgot about the stain. He proposed 2 years later on a beach in North Carolina. Nothing fancy, just him, me, and a ring he'd been saving up for months to buy. I said yes because I loved him. I said yes because he made me feel safe. I said yes because I thought safe was enough. We got married in a small ceremony. Nothing extravagant, about 50 people, mostly family and close friends. My mother cried. His mother cried. I cried too, though I'm not sure if it was from happiness or the overwhelming feeling that I was stepping into a life that would define me forever. The first year of marriage was actually beautiful. We were still discovering each other's habits, still laughing at inside jokes, still making love like we couldn't get enough of each other. Michael would bring me coffee in bed on Sunday mornings, and we'd spend hours talking about everything and nothing. But somewhere in the second year, things began to shift. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't like in the movies where there's a big fight or a moment when everything falls apart. It was more like watching a flower wilt, so gradual you don't notice it until the petals are already on the ground. Michael started working longer hours. When he came home, he was tired. Too tired for long conversations, too tired for intimacy, too tired for anything that required emotional energy. Our dinner conversations became reports. How was work? Fine. Anything interesting happen? Not really. I tried to bring it up a few times. Gently, of course. I'd suggest we go out for dinner, or take a weekend trip, or even just watch a movie together without our phones. He'd agree, but his heart wasn't in it. He'd check his emails during dinner, fall asleep during movies, spend weekends catching up on work. I began to feel invisible in my own home. That's when I started spending more time online. At first, it was innocent, scrolling through social media, reading articles, watching videos. But social media has a way of connecting you to people, doesn't it? You comment on someone's post, they comment back, and before you know it, you're having conversations with strangers that feel more intimate than the ones you have with your spouse. That's how I met Toby. His real name was probably something boring like David or John, but online he was Toby, mysterious, charming, and everything my real life wasn't. He was supposedly 32, working in digital marketing in Lagos, Nigeria. He had this way of writing that made even mundane things sound exciting. Our conversations started innocently enough. We'd chat about work, about books we were reading, about movies we'd seen. But gradually, they became more personal. He'd ask about my day, really ask like he genuinely cared about the answer. He'd remember things I'd told him weeks before. He'd send me good morning messages that made me smile before I'd even had my coffee. I know what you're thinking. I know how this sounds. Married woman, emotionally neglected, meets charming stranger online. It's a cliché as old as the internet itself. But when you're living it, it doesn't feel like a cliché. It feels like oxygen when you've been holding your breath. For weeks, our conversations stayed relatively innocent. Flirty, yes, but nothing that crossed any serious lines. He'd compliment my profile pictures, I'd tell him about my day, we'd share jokes and memes. It felt harmless, like having a pen pal who just happened to make me feel attractive and interesting again. Michael never noticed the change in my mood. If anything, he seemed relieved that I was happier, less likely to suggest we needed to work on our relationship. He didn't question why I was suddenly more interested in my phone, or why I'd smile while typing messages he couldn't see. I told myself it wasn't cheating. We lived in different countries. We'd never met. We probably never would meet. It was just conversation, friendship, a little harmless attention from someone who appreciated me. But then Toby started pushing boundaries. It began with questions about my marriage. Was I happy? Did Michael make me feel desired? When was the last time we'd been truly intimate? These weren't questions a friend should ask, and they definitely weren't questions a married woman should answer. But I did answer them. I found myself telling this stranger things I'd never admitted to anyone. How lonely I felt, how invisible, how much I missed feeling wanted. He was sympathetic, understanding. He told me I deserved better. He said Michael was a fool for not appreciating what he had. He made me feel justified in my frustration, validated in my loneliness. Then came the compliments about my appearance. How beautiful I was, how lucky Michael was, how he wished he could show me how a woman should be treated. I should have stopped it there. I should have blocked him, deleted the app, told Michael everything. Instead, I found myself looking forward to his messages more than I looked forward to my husband coming home. The night everything changed was a Thursday in October. Michael had called to say he'd be working late again, some client emergency that couldn't wait until morning. I'd made dinner for two and ended up eating alone while watching Netflix again. I was lying in bed around 9 o'clock, wearing a silk robe I'd bought months ago thinking Michael might notice it. He hadn't. I was scrolling through my phone, half watching some reality show, when Toby's message appeared. Thinking about you tonight, it said. Then, a few seconds later, wish I could show you something. I should have said no. I should have said goodnight and put my phone away. Instead, I typed back. Show me what? The video he sent was only about 30 seconds long, but it was explicit. Very explicit. I won't go into details, but let's just say it was the kind of content that would make most people blush. The kind of content a married woman definitely shouldn't be watching while lying in bed in a silk robe. But I watched it. And if I'm being completely honest, I watched it more than once. I was so absorbed in the video, so caught up in the rush of excitement and guilt and arousal, that I didn't hear the bedroom door open. I didn't realize anyone else was in the house until I heard a slight cough behind me. I looked up, and there he was, my father-in-law, Mr. Bernard, standing in my bedroom doorway, staring at me with those cold, calculating eyes that had always made me uncomfortable. He'd been watching me watch that video, watching me in my silk robe, in my most vulnerable, private moment. I screamed, not loud, more like a startled gasp, and immediately turned my phone face down, pulling my robe tighter around myself. Jesus Christ, you scared me, I said, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. He didn't apologize, didn't look embarrassed, didn't even pretend he hadn't seen exactly what I was doing. He just stood there, studying me like I was a specimen under a microscope. Sorry, he said, though his tone suggested he wasn't sorry at all. I was looking for Michael. The front door was unlocked. He's at work, I managed to say, still clutching my robe. He won't be home until late. Bernard nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving my face. I see. Well, I'll just wait for him in the living room. He turned to go, then paused. Nice robe, by the way. And then he was gone, leaving me sitting on my bed, shaking and mortified and terrified all at once. Let me tell you about my father-in-law, because understanding him is crucial to understanding what happened next. Bernard Hutchinson is 62 years old, though he looks older. He's one of those men who seems to have been born wearing a frown, like the world has been a personal disappointment to him since day one. He's tall and thin, with gray hair that's always perfectly combed and clothes that always look like they were just pressed. He lost his wife, Michael's mother, 3 years ago to cancer. It was a long, painful battle, and I think it changed him. Not that he was ever particularly warm, but after Linda died, he became even more withdrawn, more critical, more watchful. Michael tries to maintain a relationship with him, but it's not easy. Bernard has opinions about everything, how we spend our money, how we keep our house, how we live our lives. He never says anything directly, but he has this way of making comments that stick under your skin. This neighborhood's gotten quite expensive, hasn't it? He'd say when he visited, implying we were living beyond our means. Linda always kept fresh flowers in the house, he'd mention, looking at our bare kitchen table like it was a personal failing. Marriage takes work, you know. Linda, and I never needed separate bank accounts, he'd observe when Michael mentioned I handled our household finances. I'd always found him difficult, but Michael insisted family was important. He's just old-fashioned, he'd say. And he's lonely since Mom died. We need to be patient with him. So I was patient. I was polite. I made conversation at family dinners, sent birthday cards, included him in holiday celebrations. But I never liked him, and I always had the feeling he didn't like me either. There was something about the way he looked at me that made my skin crawl. Not in a sexual way, at least, not that I'd noticed before that night. It was more like he was always evaluating me, always finding me lacking, always waiting for me to slip up, so he could prove to Michael that I wasn't good enough for his son. And now I had slipped up. Spectacularly. After Bernard left my bedroom that night, I sat there for probably an hour, trying to process what had happened. Had he really seen what I was watching? How long had he been standing there? What was he thinking? What was he going to do? More importantly, what was I going to tell Michael? When my husband finally came home around 11, I was in the kitchen pretending to clean dishes that were already clean. My hands are shaking, and I'd changed into the most conservative pajamas I owned. "Hey, babe," he said, kissing my cheek absently. "Sorry, I'm so late. That client meeting ran forever, and then we had to rework half the presentation." "It's fine," I said, though my voice sounded strained even to me. "Your father stopped by." "Dad? What did he want?" This was my moment. I could tell him everything. I could explain about the loneliness, about Toby, about the video, about being caught. I could come clean and deal with the consequences like an adult. Instead, I said, "He was looking for you. I told him you were working late." Michael nodded, already distracted by something on his phone. "I'll call him tomorrow. Did you eat dinner?" "Yeah," I said. "There's leftovers if you want them." He heated up a plate and ate standing at the counter while scrolling through emails. We exchanged maybe 10 more words before he went to bed. He was asleep within minutes of his head hitting the pillow. I lay awake all night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if Bernard would tell him, wondering what I would do if he did. The next morning, Michael left for work early. I was in the kitchen drinking coffee and trying to pretend everything was normal when there was a knock at the door. It was Bernard. "Good morning, Naomi," he said when I opened the door. He was wearing a dark suit and carrying a small overnight bag. "I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all," I lied. "Michael's already left for work, though." "Actually, I came to see you." My blood went cold. "Oh. May I come in? We need to talk." I wanted to say no. I wanted to slam the door in his face and pretend this conversation never happened. Instead, I stepped aside and let him into my home. He set his bag down by the door and walked into the living room like he owned the place. I followed, my heart hammering in my chest. "Please sit," he said, gesturing to my own couch like he was the host and I was the guest. I sat. He remained standing, looking down at me with those cold eyes. "Last night was unfortunate," he began. "I'm sure you're embarrassed. I'm sure you're worried about what I might have seen." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. "The thing is, Naomi, I did see. I saw exactly what you were watching on your phone. And I saw how engaged you were with the content." My face burned with shame. "Mr. Bernard, I can explain." "No need," he said, holding up a hand. "We're both adults here. I understand that marriages go through difficulties, that people have needs that aren't always being met at home." Where was this going? Why was he being understanding? This didn't sound like the Bernard I knew. "However," he continued, and there it was, the however I'd been dreading. I do think Michael deserves to know what kind of wife he's married to." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "I mean, if my son's wife is watching pornography behind his back, engaging with other men online, wearing silk nightgowns for strangers instead of her husband, well," He should know about it, don't you think? I wasn't. I started, but he cut me off. Weren't what? Weren't watching explicit videos from another man? Weren't clearly aroused by what you were seeing? Weren't engaging in behavior that would devastate my son if he knew about it? I felt tears starting to form in my eyes. Please don't tell him. Bernard studied me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in his expression. Something that made my skin crawl. Well, he said slowly, perhaps we can work something out. What do you mean? I mean, Naomi, that I'm a reasonable man. I don't want to see my son hurt any more than you do. And I understand that people make mistakes, have moments of weakness. He paused, walking closer to where I sat on the couch. I'm sure we can find a way to keep this between us. A way for you to make amends for your indiscretion. The way he said it, the way he looked at me when he said it, made my skin crawl. But I was desperate. What kind of amends? I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. Let's start small, he said. I've been thinking about getting some help around my house. Cleaning, cooking, that sort of thing. Linda used to handle all of that, of course, but since she's been gone. He trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. You want me to clean your house? I asked. I want you to help me out, yes. As a family member should. As someone who owes me a favor for my discretion. It sounded reasonable enough, but something about his tone made it feel anything but reasonable. Once a week, he continued. Maybe twice. We'll see how it goes. And in exchange, you won't tell Michael about last night? That's right. It'll be our little secret. I should have said no. I should have told him to go ahead and tell Michael that I'd rather face my husband's disappointment than whatever Bernard had in mind. But I was scared and I was trapped and I couldn't see any other way out. Okay, I whispered. Bernard smiled, and it was the coldest smile I'd ever seen. Excellent. I'll expect you tomorrow afternoon. Say 2 o'clock. I nodded, not trusting my voice. And Naomi? He said, picking up his overnight bag. I think it's best if we keep this arrangement between ourselves. Michael doesn't need to know about your community service. After he left, I sat on my couch and cried. Not just because I was ashamed of what he'd caught me doing, but because I knew, somehow, that I'd just made a deal with the devil. The next afternoon, I drove to Bernard's house with a pit in my stomach. He lived about 20 minutes away in an older, more upscale neighborhood. The house was a 2-story colonial that Linda had decorated with impeccable taste, all neutral colors and classic furniture and fresh flowers that were now conspicuously absent. Bernard answered the door immediately, like he'd been waiting by the window. Right on time, he said. I appreciate punctuality. He led me through the house, pointing out areas that needed attention. The kitchen needed a deep clean. The bathrooms needed scrubbing. The floors needed mopping. It seemed like normal housework, which made me feel a little better. Maybe this really was just about cleaning. There are supplies under the kitchen sink, he said. Take your time. Do it right. I'll be in my study if you need anything. I spent the next 3 hours cleaning that house from top to bottom. It wasn't particularly dirty. Bernard was a neat person, but I wanted to do a thorough job. I wanted to prove that I could hold up my end of our arrangement, that this favor would satisfy whatever debt he thought I owed him. When I finished, I found him in his study, reading a book. All done, I said. He looked up, then got up and walked through the house, inspecting my work. He ran his finger along surfaces, checked corners, examined the bathroom fixtures. I followed behind him like a nervous student waiting for a grade. Acceptable, he finally said. You missed a few spots, but it'll do for now. Great, I said, eager to leave. So I'll see you next Tuesday, he interrupted. Same time. Tuesday? I thought you said once a week. I said once or twice a week. We'll see how it goes, remember. I nodded reluctantly. Right. Tuesday. As I was gathering my purse to leave, Bernard walked closer to me. Closer than he needed to. You know, Naomi, you're very thorough when you put your mind to it. I appreciate that in a woman. Something about the way he said woman made my skin crawl. I should get going, I said, stepping toward the door. Michael will be home soon. Of course. Wouldn't want to keep him waiting. Though I have to say, it's refreshing to spend time with someone who actually pays attention when I'm talking. Was that a dig at Michael? At their relationship? I'll see you Tuesday, I said, not taking the bait. I'm looking forward to it. That night at dinner, Michael asked how I'd spent my day. Just running errands, I said. Nothing exciting. It was my first real lie to him about the situation, but it wouldn't be my last. The following Tuesday, I returned to Bernard's house. This time, he had a longer list of tasks. Not just cleaning, but organizing his closets, polishing silver, even cooking dinner. Linda always made pot roast on Tuesdays, he said, showing me into the kitchen. I haven't had a proper home-cooked meal since she died. I felt sorry for him, despite everything. Losing a spouse after decades of marriage couldn't be easy. Maybe this arrangement wasn't as sinister as I'd thought. Maybe he really was just a lonely old man who needed help around the house. I spent 4 hours there that day, and by the time I left, Bernard seemed more relaxed, more like a normal person. He even thanked me genuinely for the work I'd done. Same time Thursday? He asked as I was leaving. Thursday? My heart sank. I thought we said twice a week. We did. Tuesday and Thursday. That's twice. I wanted to argue, but I was afraid to push back. Our arrangement was still too new, too fragile. Okay. Thursday. This pattern continued for 2 weeks. Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, I'd go to Bernard's house and spend increasingly longer periods of time cleaning, cooking, and organizing. He'd watch me work sometimes, making comments about how I did things differently than Linda, but not necessarily better or worse. Just different. I told myself it was fine. Unpleasant, maybe, but manageable. I was keeping my marriage intact, and Bernard was keeping his mouth shut. It was a fair trade. Then everything changed. It was the 3rd Thursday of our arrangement. I'd just finished cooking dinner, chicken parmesan, one of Linda's recipes that Bernard had insisted I learn, when he asked me to join him for the meal. I can't eat all of this by myself, he said. It would be a shame to waste it. I hesitated. Eating dinner with him felt like crossing a line, but I couldn't think of a good reason to refuse without seeming rude. We ate in his formal dining room, seated across from each other at a table set for 2. He'd even opened a bottle of wine. This is delicious, he said after a few bites. You're quite a cook. Thank you. Though I followed Linda's recipe exactly. Linda never looked as good as you do making it. I looked up sharply. Excuse me? I'm just saying, you're a beautiful woman, Naomi. Michael is lucky to have you. Mr. Bernard. Please call me Bernard. We're family after all, and we've gotten to know each other quite well these past few weeks. I felt uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was heading. I should probably head home soon. Nonsense. You haven't finished your dinner. Or your wine. He reached across the table and refilled my glass, though I'd barely touched it. Tell me, he said, settling back in his chair, are you happy in your marriage? What kind of question is that? An honest one. You can be honest with me, Naomi. After all, I already know you have needs that aren't being met at home. My face flushed. That's not. What happened that night was a mistake. Was it? Or was it just human nature? He leaned forward, his eyes fixed on mine. You're a passionate woman. I could see that right away. Michael takes after his mother. Conservative. Predictable. Not particularly adventurous. I love my husband. I'm sure you do. But love and desire aren't always the same thing, are they? I stood up abruptly. I need to go home. Sit down, Naomi. Something in his tone made me freeze. It wasn't a request. Sit down, he repeated more gently. We're just talking. Reluctantly, I sat back down. You know, he continued, I've been thinking about our arrangement. About the favor you're doing for me. What about it? Well, I wonder if it's really enough. I mean, anyone can clean a house, cook a meal. But you owe me something more significant than housework, don't you? My stomach dropped. What do you mean? I mean, keeping your secret, your affair, really, that's worth more than a few hours of cleaning each week. It's not an affair. I never even met him. Emotional infidelity is still infidelity, Naomi. Still a betrayal of your marriage vows. Still something that would devastate my son if he knew about it. He was right, and we both knew it. What do you want? I asked quietly. He smiled, and there was something predatory in that smile that made my blood run cold. I want companionship, he said. Real companionship. Linda has been gone for 3 years, and I'm lonely. I can't. I started, but he held up a hand. I'm not asking for anything inappropriate, he said. I'm simply asking for more of your time. Your attention. Your company. What does that mean exactly? It means I'd like you to visit more often. Have dinner with me regularly. Watch a movie sometimes.
Talk.
Really talk, like adults who enjoy each other's company. It sounded innocent enough, but the way he was looking at me made it clear that his intentions were anything but innocent. Bernard, I'm married to your son. Yes, you are. And I'm sure you want to stay married to him. The threat was implicit but clear. Do what I want, or I'll tell Michael about your online activities. This isn't right, I said. What's not right is a wife betraying her husband's trust. What I'm offering you is a chance to make amends for that betrayal. I felt trapped, caught in a web of my own making. My moment of weakness, my need for attention and excitement, had given this man power over me. And he was going to use that power to get what he wanted. How often? I asked, hating myself for even considering it. 3 times a week. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. We'll have dinner, spend the evening together. Like family. 3 times a week. That was almost half my free time. What am I supposed to tell Michael? Whatever you think is best. You're creative. I'm sure you'll think of something. I sat there for a long moment, weighing my options. I could refuse, let him tell Michael, and deal with the consequences of my actions. But that would mean admitting to the emotional affair, explaining about Toby, watching my marriage crumble. Or I could agree to Bernard's terms and hope that eventually he'd grow tired of the arrangement. Fine, I said finally. 3 times a week. But nothing inappropriate. Just dinner and company. Of course, he agreed, but his smile suggested he had a very different definition of appropriate than I did. That was the beginning of the most difficult period of my life. For the next month, I spent 3 evenings a week at Bernard's house. I cooked elaborate dinners, listened to him talk about his work, his memories of Linda, his opinions about everything from politics to the neighbors. I watched old movies with him, played card games, even helped him work in his garden. To an outside observer, it might have looked innocent enough. A daughter-in-law helping her widowed father-in-law, keeping him company in his loneliness. But there was nothing innocent about the way Bernard looked at me, touched me, or spoke to me when we were alone. It started small. A hand on my shoulder that lingered too long. Comments about my appearance that went beyond appropriate. Sitting too close to me on the couch during movies. You smell lovely tonight, he'd say, leaning in closer than necessary. That dress is very flattering. Is it new? You have such beautiful hands. Linda's were always so rough from gardening. I tried to deflect, to maintain boundaries, but Bernard was persistent. And he always had the same weapon to use against me, Michael's ignorance of my online activities. I hope you're not feeling uncomfortable, he'd say when I'd pull away from his touch. Because if you are, maybe we need to reconsider our arrangement. Maybe Michael should know the truth about what kind of wife he married. So I endured it. The inappropriate comments, the unwanted touches, the way he looked at me like I was something to be consumed rather than a person to be respected. Michael never questioned where I was going those 3 evenings a week. When I told him I was helping his father with housework and companionship, he was actually pleased. That's really sweet of you, honey, he said. Dad's been so lonely since Mom died. I'm sure he appreciates having you around. If only he knew what his father really wanted from me. The breaking point came on a Saturday evening in late November. Bernard had made dinner this time, a somewhat impressive spread that he claimed was one of Linda's favorites. He'd also opened an expensive bottle of wine and insisted I drink more than usual. This is really good, I said, trying to make conversation and avoid the uncomfortable silences that had become more frequent. Linda and I used to drink this wine on special occasions, he said. Anniversaries, birthdays, celebrations. What are we celebrating tonight? You, he said simply. Me? It's been 2 months since our arrangement began. 2 months of your company, your cooking, your presence in my life. I wanted to commemorate that. Something about his tone made me nervous. Bernard. You know, he interrupted, Linda and I had a very traditional marriage. She was a good wife, a devoted wife. But she was never particularly passionate. I didn't want to hear this. I don't think we should talk about Linda like that. Why not?
She's gone.
And you're very much alive. Very passionate. I could see that the first night I caught you. Can we please not talk about that?
Why?
It's the foundation of our relationship, isn't it? That moment when I saw you for who you really are. He moved from his chair to the couch where I was sitting, positioning himself closer than I was comfortable with. You know what I think, he continued. I think you liked being watched. I think part of you wanted to be caught. That's not true. Isn't it? You were in your bedroom. Door open, volume up. If you really wanted privacy, you could have been more careful. I thought I was alone in the house. But you weren't. And when you realized I was there, when you saw me watching you, you didn't immediately turn off the video, did you? I felt my face burn with shame, because he was right. For just a moment, before embarrassment and fear took over, there had been something thrilling about being watched. Something exciting about being seen in that vulnerable, aroused state. I think, Bernard continued, moving even closer, that we've been dancing around what we both really want for too long. Bernard, stop.
Why?
We're both adults. We both have needs. Michael clearly isn't meeting yours, and Linda isn't here to meet mine. His hand touched my knee, and I jumped up from the couch. I need to go home, I said. No, you don't. Michael thinks you're helping me organize Linda's clothes tonight, remember? He's not expecting you back for hours. This isn't what we agreed to. Our agreement was that you'd make amends for your betrayal. Well, I think it's time for you to really make amends. He stood up and moved toward me. I backed away, but the coffee table was behind me, and I had nowhere to go. Bernard, please. I've been patient, Naomi. I've been a gentleman. But I'm tired of pretending this arrangement is about housework and companionship. If you touch me, I'll scream. And say what? That you're being assaulted by the man who's been keeping your adultery secret? Who's been protecting your marriage? He had me cornered, literally and figuratively. Besides, he continued, reaching out to touch my face, I don't think you'll scream. I think you want this as much as I do. That was the moment I realized how much danger I was in. This wasn't just about inappropriate behavior or uncomfortable advances. Bernard had been planning this, working toward this, since the moment he caught me watching that video. I was trapped in his house, in his web, with no way out. But as his hand moved toward me, something strange happened. Instead of feeling more afraid, I felt a sudden surge of anger. Anger at him for manipulating me. Anger at myself for letting him. Anger at the whole situation that had spiraled so far out of control. Don't, I said firmly, grabbing his wrist and stopping his hand inches from my face. Don't what? Don't touch me. Don't threaten me. And don't pretend this is about anything other than you being a predatory old man who gets off on having power over someone. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe, or annoyance that I was fighting back. Careful, Naomi. You're forgetting who holds all the cards here. Am I? Because it seems to me like you're forgetting something too. What's that? You're forgetting that I've been in your house 3 times a week for 2 months. I've cleaned your rooms, organized your closets, handled your personal belongings. I saw a flash of uncertainty cross his face. I've seen things, Bernard. Things you probably don't want Michael to know about. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the receipts I found in your bedroom dresser. Hotel receipts. From the Marriott downtown. Every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 6 months. His face went pale. I'm talking about the credit card statements showing charges at Victoria's Secret, charges for jewelry, charges for expensive dinners for 2 at restaurants where you definitely weren't eating alone. You had no right. I had no right? You blackmailed me into cleaning your house.
Of course I saw things.
And I'm talking about the photos, Bernard. The photos of you with a woman who looks young enough to be your granddaughter. The power dynamic in the room shifted so quickly, it was almost tangible. Suddenly, Bernard wasn't the predator anymore. He was just a scared old man whose secrets had been discovered. "Where did you find those?" he asked quietly. "Does it matter? What matters is that I found them. And I took pictures of them with my phone before I put them back." This wasn't entirely true. I'd only recently discovered his secret stash, and I hadn't taken photos yet. But Bernard didn't know that. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" "Her name is Jessica, right? 24 years old. Works at that little boutique in the shopping center downtown? The one where you bought her that diamond bracelet?" I was fishing, making educated guesses based on what I'd seen, but the look on Bernard's face told me I was hitting close to the mark. "What do you want?" he asked, sinking back into his chair. "I want our arrangement to end. Tonight. I want you to forget you ever saw me watching that video, and I want you to never mention it to Michael or anyone else. And in exchange? In exchange, I keep your secret about Jessica. About the hotels, the gifts, the fact that you've been having an affair with a girl younger than your son for months." "It's not an affair. Linda is dead." "No, but it's certainly something Michael wouldn't appreciate knowing about his grieving father, don't you think? Especially since you started seeing Jessica only 3 months after his mother died." Bernard was quiet for a long moment, processing the reversal of our situations. "How long have you known?" he finally asked. "Long enough. And before you ask, yes, I have proof. Photos, copies of receipts, even some of the text messages I saw on your phone when you left it on the kitchen counter last week." Another bluff, but a convincing one. "You've been planning this," he said. "No, Bernard. I've been surviving this. There's a difference." I picked up my purse and headed for the door. "Our arrangement is over," I said. "You don't contact me, you don't ask me to come over, and you definitely don't ever touch me again. And in return, your secret stays safe." "What if I tell Michael anyway?" Out of spite, I turned back to face him. "Then I guess Michael learns about both of our secrets, doesn't he? But somehow, I think he'd be more upset about his father preying on his wife than about his wife watching a video on her phone." I left him sitting in that dining room, surrounded by the remnants of his romantic dinner that had turned into his worst nightmare. The drive home was surreal. For 2 months, I'd felt powerless, trapped, at the mercy of a man who held my mistake over my head like a sword. And then, in the space of 10 minutes, everything had changed. I'd found my power. I'd found my voice. I'd found my way out. But more than that, I'd realized something important about myself. I wasn't a victim. I'd made a mistake, yes, but that didn't mean I deserved to be manipulated and threatened and cornered by a predatory old man. When I got home, Michael was in the living room watching television. "How did it go with Dad?" he asked without looking up from the screen. "Good," I said. "Really good, actually. I think he's doing better. More independent." "That's great. Maybe he won't need as much help anymore." Maybe not. That night, lying in bed next to my husband, I thought about everything that had led to this moment. My loneliness in our marriage. My online conversations with Toby. The video that Bernard had caught me watching. The months of manipulation and fear that followed. But I also thought about the moment when I'd realized I had power too. When I'd stopped being afraid and started fighting back. It was the first time in months that I slept peacefully. The next few weeks passed quietly.
Bernard didn't contact me.
He didn't show up at our house unexpectedly. He didn't even call Michael as often as he usually did. It was like he'd simply faded out of our lives, which was exactly what I'd hoped for. But I should have known it wouldn't be that simple. 3 weeks after our confrontation, Michael came home from work looking troubled. "Everything okay?" I asked. "I'm not sure. I had lunch with Dad today." My stomach clenched. "Oh, how is he?" "That's just it. He seemed off. Nervous, maybe. And he kept asking weird questions about you." "What kind of questions?" "Like, how long have you two been married? Do I trust you? Do I think you're happy in our marriage?" Stuff like that. "What did you tell him?" "I told him we're fine, obviously. But it was strange. Like he was fishing for something. I felt a chill run down my spine. Was Bernard having second thoughts about our arrangement? Was he planning to tell Michael about the video after all? Did he say anything else? He mentioned that you haven't been helping him around the house lately. He seemed disappointed about that. I've been busy, I said, which wasn't entirely untrue. I know. I got the feeling there was something he wasn't telling me. Something about you. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Bernard's questions, his disappointment that I wasn't visiting anymore. Was he planning to break our agreement? Was he going to tell Michael about the video and let the chips fall where they may? I decided I needed to take action before he did. The next day, while Michael was at work, I drove to Bernard's house. I didn't call ahead. I wanted the element of surprise. He answered the door in his bathrobe, looking haggard and tired. Naomi, what are you doing here? We need to talk. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't care what you think. Let me in. Reluctantly, he stepped aside. Michael said you had lunch with him yesterday, I said without preamble. So, you were asking questions about our marriage. About me. I'm concerned about my son's happiness. Bullshit. You're planning to tell him, aren't you? Bernard didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. Our deal was that you'd keep quiet, I continued, in exchange for me keeping quiet about Jessica. Maybe I've decided the deal isn't fair. How is it not fair? You get to go back to your normal life, your marriage, your happiness. I get to keep a secret that doesn't affect me anyway. It doesn't affect you? Bernard, if Michael knew you were sleeping with a girl barely out of college 3 months after his mother died, it would destroy your relationship with him. Maybe. But if Michael knew his wife was having an emotional affair, it would destroy his marriage. Which one of us has more to lose? He had a point and we both knew it. What do you want? I asked. I want things to go back to the way they were. I want you to come over 3 times a week. I want your company. And if I refuse? Then I tell Michael everything. The video, the texting with other men, all of it. I felt the familiar weight of his blackmail settling over me again. But this time, I was ready for it. Okay, I said. Okay. I'll come over 3 times a week. I'll cook dinner, clean your house, keep you company. Just like before. Bernard looked suspicious. Just like that? Just like that. But I have one condition. You're not in a position to make conditions. I think I am. My condition is this. I get to bring my laptop with me when I visit. What for?
Work.
I have a freelance project I'm working on, and I'll need to keep up with it even while I'm here. Bernard considered this.
Fine.
As long as it doesn't interfere with your other duties. It won't.
Good.
I'll see you tomorrow night then. As I left Bernard's house, I felt like I was walking back into a trap. But this time I had a plan. That evening, I had a long conversation with Michael about our marriage. Not about Bernard, not about the video, but about us. About how we'd grown distant, how we'd stopped communicating, how we'd let work and routine take precedence over our relationship. I've been thinking, I said as we sat on the couch after dinner. Maybe we should try couples counseling. Michael looked surprised. Counseling? Are we having problems? Not problems exactly. But I feel like we've grown apart lately. Like we're roommates instead of husband and wife. He was quiet for a moment considering this. You're right, he said finally. I have been distracted lately. Work has been crazy, and I know I haven't been paying enough attention to you. It's not just you. It's both of us. But I think we can fix it if we try. Okay, let's look into counseling. Maybe it would be good for us. It was a start, not a solution to the Bernard problem, but a step toward rebuilding the connection with my husband that had been missing for so long. The next evening, I returned to Bernard's house as promised. I brought my laptop, as I'd said I would, but not for work. What's for dinner? Bernard asked as I sat at my computer on his kitchen table. I thought I'd make that chicken dish you liked, I said, opening my laptop and starting a program I'd downloaded the day before. Good. I'll be in the living room watching the news. As I cooked, I also worked on my laptop. But instead of the freelance project I'd claimed to be doing, I was running a recording program. A program that would capture both video and audio of everything that happened in the kitchen and, by extension, the adjacent living and dining rooms. If Bernard was going to blackmail me again, I was going to make sure I had evidence of it. Dinner proceeded much as it had during our previous arrangement. Bernard made inappropriate comments, sat too close to me, tried to steer the conversation toward intimate topics. But this time, I was documenting everything. "You know, Naomi," he said as we finished eating, "I've missed this. I've missed you." "Have you?" I replied, keeping my voice neutral while making sure my laptop's camera had a clear view of both of us.
Yes.
"These past few weeks, without your company, it's been lonely. I'm sure Jessica keeps you busy." "That's different. Jessica is temporary. Your family. Is that what I am?" "You could be more than that if you wanted to be." "More than family? You know what I mean." He reached across the table and placed his hand over mine. I didn't pull away, but I made sure the camera captured his action. "Bernard, I'm married to your son. Michael doesn't have to know." "Doesn't have to know what?" "That we've grown close. That we have a special relationship." "What kind of special relationship?" "The kind where we take care of each other. Where we meet each other's needs." "And what needs would those be?" I was leading him on, getting him to be explicit about what he wanted, making sure it was all recorded. "You know what I need, Naomi. The same thing you need. Intimacy. Passion. The kind of excitement that's been missing from both our lives. You want to have an affair with me. I want us to be together. The way we should have been from the beginning. And if I say no, then Michael learns about your extracurricular activities online." There it was. The blackmail, clearly stated, recorded for posterity. "I see," I said. "So my choices are to sleep with you, or have my marriage destroyed." Those are dramatic terms. I prefer to think of it as mutual benefit. I stood up from the table, ostensibly to clear the dishes, but really to get a better angle for the camera. "Bernard, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you really think Linda would approve of what you're doing?" His face darkened. "Linda is dead. But if she weren't, if she could see you right now, trying to coerce your son's wife into sleeping with you, do you think she'd be proud?" "Don't talk about Linda." "Why not? She was your wife for 35 years. She raised your children, took care of your home, stood by your side through everything. And now you're dishonoring her memory by—" "Shut up." "By blackmailing her daughter-in-law into—" I said shut up. Bernard stood up abruptly, knocking his chair over. His face was red with anger. "You don't get to talk about Linda.
You don't get to judge me.
You're the one who is cheating on her son." "I wasn't cheating." "You were. Emotionally, if not physically. You were having an affair and I caught you, and now you have to pay the consequences." "The consequences?" "The consequences for watching a video. The consequences for being a lying, cheating wife." He moved around the table toward me, and for a moment I thought he might actually hit me. But instead, he grabbed my arm. "You're going to do what I say when I say it. And if you don't, I will destroy your marriage. I will tell Michael everything, and I will make sure he knows what kind of woman he really married." "Let go of me." "Not until you understand." I said let go of me. I pulled free of his grip, making sure the whole interaction was captured on camera. "I understand perfectly, Bernard. You're a pathetic old man who can't get a woman without threatening her. You're a predator who uses people's mistakes against them. And you're a hypocrite who thinks he can judge others while carrying on with girls young enough to be his granddaughter. You have no proof of that, don't I?" I walked to my laptop and turned it around so he could see the screen. On it was a video I'd taken the week before, Bernard and Jessica together at a restaurant downtown, clearly intimate, clearly romantic. "I've been watching you, Bernard. Learning your routines, documenting your activities. I know where you meet her, when you see her, what hotels you take her to. I have photos, videos, receipts, even screenshots of your text messages. How did you? You left your phone unlocked on the counter last month, remember? It was easy to forward myself a few choice conversations." Bernard's face went white. "And now," I continued, "I have this lovely recording of you threatening to destroy my marriage unless I sleep with you. I think Michael would be very interested to hear his father's thoughts on how daughters-in-law should pay consequences. I saved the recording and closed my laptop. So here's what's going to happen, Bernard. You're going to forget you ever saw me watching that video. You're going to stop asking Michael strange questions about our marriage. You're going to stop expecting me to visit you, cook for you, or have anything to do with you beyond polite family gatherings. And if I don't, then Michael gets to see everything. The photos of you and Jessica, the hotel receipts, the jewelry purchases, and this lovely recording of you trying to blackmail his wife into sleeping with you. I headed toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and Bernard? I think you should know that Michael and I are starting couples counseling next week. We're working on our marriage, communicating better, being more honest with each other. So, even if you did tell him about the video, we'd work through it together. But I don't think your relationship with him would survive him learning what you really are. I left Bernard standing in his dining room, probably for the last time. The drive home was different from the last time I'd confronted him. That time, I'd felt triumphant but unsure, like I'd won a battle but wasn't sure about the war. This time I felt free. Free from his threats, free from his manipulation, free from the constant fear that my moment of weakness would destroy my marriage. But more than that, I felt strong. I'd learned something about myself through this ordeal. I wasn't as helpless as I'd thought. When I was truly backed into a corner, when someone tried to use my mistakes against me, I could fight back. I could find my power, even in the darkest situations. Michael was waiting up for me when I got home. "How was Dad?" he asked. "Actually," I said, "I think he's going to be fine on his own from now on." "Really?" He seemed to think he still needed help. I think he was just lonely. But I encouraged him to get out more, maybe start dating again. Michael looked surprised. "Dating? It's only been 3 years since Mom died." 3 years is a long time to be alone. I think Linda would want him to be happy. Maybe you're right. It would be good for him to have some companionship. If only he knew how much companionship Bernard already had. That night, lying in bed next to my husband, I thought about everything that had happened over the past few months. My emotional affair with Toby, the moment of watching that video that changed everything, the months of blackmail and manipulation, and finally, the moment when I'd found my strength and fought back. I wasn't proud of the choices that had led to this situation. I wasn't proud of seeking emotional intimacy outside my marriage, of lying to my husband, of keeping secrets that could have destroyed us. But I was proud of how I'd handled Bernard. I was proud of finding my voice, standing up for myself, refusing to be a victim. And I was proud that Michael and I were going to work on our marriage, that we were going to try to rebuild what we'd lost, that we were committed to being honest and connected again. 2 weeks later, Michael came home from work with interesting news. "I had lunch with Dad again today," he said. My stomach clenched, but I kept my voice calm. "Oh, how is he?" "Good, actually. Really good. He's been different lately." "Different how?" "Happier, I guess. More relaxed. And get this, he's dating someone." "Really? That's wonderful." "Yeah, her name is Jessica. She's younger than him, but he seems really smitten. They met at some shop where she works." I managed to keep my expression neutral. Good for him. I'm glad he's found someone. He wants us to meet her soon. Maybe have dinner together. That sounds nice. And surprisingly, it did sound nice. Not because I was eager to meet Jessica. I already knew more about her than I cared to, but because it meant Bernard was moving on with his life. He'd found happiness elsewhere, which meant he'd have no reason to bother me anymore. 3 months later, Michael and I had our first real breakthrough in counseling. We talked about the distance that had grown between us, about how we'd both contributed to the problems in our marriage, about what we wanted our relationship to look like going forward. "I know I've been absent," Michael said during one session. "I let work become more important than us, and that wasn't fair to you. And I should have talked to you about how I was feeling instead of looking elsewhere for attention," I replied. It was as close as I'd come to telling him about Toby, and it was enough. He understood that I'd been tempted by outside attention, and I understood that he'd neglected our relationship. We both committed to doing better. 6 months later, Bernard married Jessica in a small ceremony. Michael was his best man. I was gracious and polite to the new bride, and she seemed like a sweet girl who genuinely cared about Bernard. I hoped he made her happy, and more importantly, I hoped he treated her better than he'd treated me. At the reception, Bernard and I found ourselves alone for a moment at the bar. "Congratulations," I said genuinely. "She seems lovely." "Thank you," he replied. "And Naomi, I want to apologize." I looked at him, surprised. For what? For how I behaved. After Linda died, after I caught you that night, I wasn't myself. I was angry and lonely, and I took it out on you in ways that were completely inappropriate. Bernard. No, let me finish. What I did, the way I treated you, it was wrong. You didn't deserve that, no matter what mistakes you might have made. I studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation, but he seemed genuinely contrite. Jessica has helped me see that, he continued. She's helped me understand that grief isn't an excuse for hurting people. That loneliness doesn't justify manipulation. I'm glad you found happiness with her, I said. And I'm glad you and Michael work things out. He seems much happier lately. We both are. Bernard nodded. Good. That's how it should be. As I watched him walk back to his new bride, I felt something I hadn't expected. Forgiveness. Not for what he'd done. That was unforgivable. But forgiveness for the pain and loneliness that had driven him to do it. People make terrible choices when they're hurt and desperate. I knew that better than most. A year later, Michael and I renewed our vows in a small ceremony with just our immediate family. It wasn't because our marriage had been in trouble. We'd never told anyone about the rough patch we'd gone through, but because we wanted to recommit to each other, to celebrate how far we'd come. Bernard and Jessica were there, looking happy and settled. During the reception, Jessica pulled me aside. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "For what?" "Bernard told me that you encouraged him to start dating again. He said you told him Linda would want him to be happy." I smiled. "I'm sure she would." "He also said you helped him through a really difficult time after she died. That you were there for him when he needed family support." It was a generous rewriting of history, and I appreciated Bernard for framing it that way. "We're family," I said simply. "That's what family does." As I looked around the reception, at my husband laughing with his friends, at Bernard and Jessica dancing together, at all the people who cared about us, I reflected on everything that had brought me to this moment. I'd made mistakes. I'd been lonely and sought attention in inappropriate places. I'd lied to my husband and kept secrets that could have destroyed our marriage. But I'd also learned that I was stronger than I'd thought. That when pushed to my breaking point, I could find my voice and fight back. That even in the darkest situations, even when someone tried to use my mistakes against me, I had power. Most importantly, I'd learned that marriage is work. Real work. It requires honesty, communication, and effort from both people. It requires choosing to love each other even when it's hard, even when you're tired, even when life gets in the way. Michael and I had almost lost each other. We'd let distance and routine and neglect nearly destroy what we'd built together. But we'd found our way back.
And Bernard?
He'd found his own path to happiness, one that didn't involve manipulating or threatening anyone. Jessica seemed to bring out a better version of him. The man he'd been before grief and loneliness had twisted him into someone unrecognizable. As for Toby, I'd blocked him months ago. I'd deleted the apps, deleted the conversations, deleted that entire chapter of my life. It had been a symptom of larger problems in my marriage, not a solution to them. Sometimes, late at night when I couldn't sleep, I'd think about that video. The one Bernard had caught me watching, the one that had started this entire chain of events. I'd think about how different my life might have been if he hadn't walked into that room at that moment. But then I'd look at Michael sleeping beside me, at the life we'd rebuilt together, at the happiness we'd found, and I'd realize that maybe everything happened exactly as it was supposed to. Maybe I needed to be pushed to that breaking point to find my strength. Maybe our marriage needed to be tested to emerge stronger. Maybe Bernard needed to confront his own demons before he could find peace with Jessica. Or maybe that's just what I tell myself to make sense of a senseless situation. Either way, I'm not that woman anymore. The woman who was so lonely she sought attention from strangers online. The woman who was so afraid of confrontation that she let herself be manipulated and threatened. I'm stronger now, wiser, more honest with myself and with the people I love. And if someone ever tries to use my past mistakes against me again, well, they'll discover that I've learned a few things about fighting back. The house is quiet now as I finish telling you this story. Michael is upstairs working on his laptop, probably answering emails or reviewing reports for tomorrow's meetings. But when he's done, he'll come downstairs and ask about my day. Really ask, not just make conversation. And I'll tell him, not everything, but enough. We don't keep secrets anymore. Later tonight, we'll watch a movie together. Something mindless and entertaining, the kind we both enjoy. We'll share a bowl of popcorn and maybe a glass of wine, and we'll actually watch the movie instead of scrolling through our phones. It's a simple thing, but it's ours. It's real. It's the life we chose to build together after we almost lost each other. Bernard and Jessica live about 30 minutes away now. They invited us for dinner next month, and we'll probably go. We've all moved on, found our own versions of happiness, learned to coexist as families should. But sometimes, when I'm driving past his old house, I remember what happened there. I remember feeling trapped and powerless and afraid. I remember the moment when I decided I'd had enough, when I found my voice and fought back. And I smile. Because that woman, the one who refused to be a victim, who turned the tables on her tormentor, who found her power in the darkest moment, she's still here. She's part of who I am now. She's the reason I'm not afraid anymore. She's the reason I sleep peacefully at night, knowing that no one will ever have that kind of power over me again. She's the reason I can tell you this story with confidence rather than shame. Because in the end, I didn't just survive what Bernard put me through. I won. Please share your thoughts and don't forget to subscribe to Love Lies Diaries.